Hi Jen.
Ahoj Eliška.
Hi everyone. Welcome to another talk about Czech cases. Just to make sure, just to repeat it once more, in this series on Czech cases, I'm not focusing on the endings. I'm not showing you how to change the endings of words, but I'm focusing on the logic or the meaning behind Czech cases so that they become a bit more logical. I'm using the casebook for Czech as the main resource because I honestly think it's genius, but I'm trying to simplify it a little bit. So I take information from the book, but try to convey the main message behind each case. And because I realize it's much more easy for me to have a partner, a speaking partner, and to just analyze cases together with someone, I asked my dear friend Jen from Dream Prague to join me.
Thank you.
And we decided to finish this series together.
Excellent. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for joining me, Jen, today.
I have a lot to learn.
Yeah, me too. And today we will talk about the second Czech case, which is the genitive or genitive case. In the casebook for Czech, they find one word, a key word that describes or summarizes each of Czech cases. So now for the genitive case, we have more keywords, and the first one is a source. So Jen, when you think about it, the genitive case is a source.
So I would think like where something is from. Like I'm from America. Jsem z Ameriky.
Great. So let's take an example sentence. Jsem z Ameriky. Jen je z Ameriky. So America is the source where Jen comes from, right?
Sure. Exactly.
And it actually makes sense because the word genitive is connected to words like generation, Genesis. You know the biblical book Genesis that explains the creation or the birth of our world.
Yes. I never thought about that. Okay.
So like metaphorically said, America is the source of Jen.
We could say that. Yeah. And you are z Prahy.
Z Prahy.
Z Prahy. Very nice.
So the first keyword that you can connect with the genitive case is a source, right? And you use the preposition z, which means from, and we use it very often when we speak about the place where something comes from. Can you think of other examples? Maybe not a city,
not a city,
not a country, something else.
Well, water is from pramen.
Spramene.
Spramene. What is it? Spramene.
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 Amazing.
So water is from a source.
Okay. And this is actually the word, the key word, source.
Yes.
Pramen in Czech.
Okay,
amazing. The genitive case can also symbolize a selection of something from a group.
Okay.
Do you have any ideas or examples how we could use it?
Like a group of cities. So maybe Praha je jedno.
One of jedno z.
Jedno z českých měst.
Great. So again we use the preposition z. Praha je jedno z českých měst. Prague is one of Czech cities.
Yes.
And here you can imagine Czech cities as a group, and we metaphorically take one out of it.
Interesting.
Right?
Okay.
So where is the genitive here? Is it Prague or Czech cities?
Czech cities. Exactly, because that's the source of Prague, if you're thinking metaphorically.
So we saw the preposition z, which we use with the genitive case or the genitive case. Do you know other prepositions that we use with this case?
Lots. U, do, od. These are all genitive.
Great. Let's talk about the preposition od, which is very similar to z, right?
Very confusing sometimes.
Because we come from somewhere. In English, you probably use the same preposition.
We do. From.
But in Czech, we have two. So let's say, let's take the sentence do z kina. I'm coming from the movies. And compare it with the sentence do od kina.
That's tricky. So we use od to mean coming from like a person's place, like a doctor's or od Elišky, right? And I'm coming like from outside you. So I think maybe od is also from like outside the movie theater, whereas z is maybe coming from inside the movie theater because you're coming from inside a city, inside a country. Is that right?
Yeah. Okay. Right. So if we speak about places, cities, countries, continents, we use z. If we are inside a building, we say du z. But if we are outside of the building, we wait at the door, we say du od kina. I'm coming. How would you say it in English? Du od kina.
Well, we would say I'm coming from outside.
From outside.
From outside the movie theater.
Yeah. And then you mentioned people, and this is another great example. We use the preposition od if we speak about people.
Yes.
So I'm at Eliška's place, and then I return home and I say du od Elišky.
Okay, perfect.
If you say du z Elišky, it might sound a bit sexistic or dirty, so don't say it. Du od Elišky.
This is good. Okay, I'll never forget this.
Yeah. So with people, od, only od.
Okay. Good.
Great. We've seen the prepositions z and od, which indicate coming from somewhere. Now we can have a look at verbs, specific verbs that are also followed by the genitive case. And they indicate a withdrawal from something.
Okay.
So for example, bát se. If I say bojím se ptáků, I'm afraid of birds.
If I was afraid of a bird, I would definitely withdraw. I would move away from it.
Like,
oh, yeah, okay. So it's kind of like along the lines of od, you're withdrawing from it. Okay.
Great. Other examples would be vzdát se peněz.
To give up money. And give up is a little tricky. Can you think of another way, like an example of give up? Giving up money?
Vzdát se in Czech, let's say I win the lottery. And I say, no, keep the money, I don't want it. How would you say it in English?
Another word for give up is fine, but I would say forfeit.
Okay.
To you're essentially pushing the money away. You're leaving the money there and you're withdrawing from it.
Great. Yeah. So again, there is the movement away from the source.
Okay.
So in the sentence, vzdát se peněz, where's the genitive?
Peněz.
Peněz. So again, I'm going away from the money.
Right. The thing you're moving away from is what's in the genitive. Okay.
Great.
So interesting. I never thought that there was something. I just kind of memorized which verbs, but I didn't realize there was a logic to it.
So we talked about the source. We talked about the prepositions z, od, and the verbs that indicate the withdrawal from something. Now we can look at the second keyword connected with the genitive case, which is a goal.
Opposite almost. The goal. Okay.
It's interesting, right? That one case can be used in two completely different situations or opposite situations.
I'm curious how. We'll see.
Do you have any idea which preposition we could use to express a goal?
Well, the immediate one I thought is do.
Do.
Because it's like the opposite of od. Just
or
going for a goal. Right, exactly.
Right. Do you have any example sentence?
I could say idu do Ameriky. Or letím do Ameriky.
Do would be walking, so better letím
do Ameriky.
So here America is our goal, is the goal of our journey.
Sure.
It reminds me a little bit of the concept of destination, the one we talked about in the video on the accusative case. So do you know what's the difference between the genitive case and do and the accusative case and na?
Well, I do know that I've been taught to sort of memorize these, that we use do for most countries, most places, but we use na for very particular ones, like Morava, Slovensko, and also Florida, Poloostrov,
Islands,
and Poloostrov. I can't remember the English word.
Peninsulas?
Peninsula, exactly. So I know that there are some exceptions, but I don't know if there's a logic behind why we use do and why we use na.
So both actually express the same. So you correctly said we use do with countries, with cities, and with closed spaces. Yeah. Right? So if you go inside, inside a house with a roof, you usually use the preposition do.
Would I say do ordinace? That's interesting because then you'd say that's a doctor's office. So when we'd use od to come from the doctor's from the doctor, but z from the ordinace.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, it's coming together. Okay.
And I think your strategy is great to memorize situations or words that require the accusative case. So we call them the na words that use the preposition na.
Yes.
Can we quickly summarize them?
Sure. So na Ukraine.
So exceptions with countries.
Oh, is this what you asked? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Na Ukraine. Na Slovensko. Na Slovensko. Na Moravu. I did learn a trick about this. Na is used for some place that was a part of another place, a region. This is a little bit controversial because, so Morava is a part of the Czech Republic, and then Slovensko used to be part of Czechoslovakia, although it depends on who's telling what it's part of. And then Ukraine, obviously. Ukraine is its own country, but it's traditionally been considered part of this different area, and so that's why it's a little controversial.
Yeah, it is indeed. And recently you can notice in television that they start saying do Ukrainy.
Yes.
Instead of na Ukrainu.
In English, we've stopped saying the Ukraine because that connotes an area, and we say Ukraine. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it is. That reality reflects in the language, or vice versa.
Yeah, right.
Okay, never mind. So the exceptions with countries are na Ukrajinu, na Moravu, na Slovensko, and then we don't use the genitive, but we use the accusative case and the preposition na. With institutions.
Yes.
Na poštu.
Yes, government institutions. What else?
With
universities.
Na univerzitu, na
and
ambasádu.
this is just a matter of memorizing them. There's a little bit of logic to it, but you learn that early on.
Yeah. We use it with events, so na oběd, na pivo.
Na pivo, na chai.
Na chai.
Sure. Okay.
And also, I would say social gatherings.
Na večírek.
Na večírek. Na koncert. Right? So I think it's the best to memorize these na words and remember, okay, these I use them with the accusative case.
Yes.
But if I go inside, we use the genitive case and the preposition do.
Okay.
We said, did we have an example using the preposition do with the genitive case? Do ordinace.
Do ordinace, do Ameriky, do Prahy, do nemocnice. Okay.
Sometimes it's not necessarily a closed space. We can, for example, say jdu do práce. Which can also be an activity.
That is interesting because it's work, but do práce. Yes. It's like, in my learner's opinion, you just have to commit them to memory, and then there's some sort of logic that becomes apparent, but it's best to just memorize them.
Yeah, do práce, do školy, do nemocnice, as you said. So just to summarize, we have these two, or actually three prepositions: z, ot,
do.
And we often use them together. Can you give me a few examples? Puk, puk.
Well, I would say od jedna do pět.
That's interesting. Od jedné do pěti.
Od jedné do pěti.
So we not only use these prepositions for physical places, but also metaphorically for time with dates. Od 1. do 2. srpna.
Yes, exactly. Okay.
Or with physical places, z práce do práce.
Od nemocnice do nevím, divadlo.
Od nemocnice do divadla. Great. So z, do, od, do. So we've seen the preposition do, which indicates going to a place, and we use it with the genitive case or the genitive case. We also have a group of verbs that are followed by the genitive case, and these verbs indicate the same or have the same idea. They indicate approach. So, for example, dotknout se. Dotknout se Jen.
Well, obviously, you're approaching me.
To touch someone,
exactly.
to touch something. This is quite real or physical, but it can we can use it with more abstract verbs. For example, vážit si něčeho.
To believe.
To appreciate.
To appreciate. I'm sorry. To appreciate. That's metaphorical for sure, but you're also like your attention is approaching that thing. You could say.
Vážit si něčeho. Účastnit se konference.
To take part in. So you're not sort of a viewer that's sitting on the outside. You're participating in. So you're approaching.
So we've seen the source. Jen je z Ameriky. We've seen the goal. Letím do Ameriky.
Yeah.
And the third keyword is a whole, but not in a rabbit hole, but in a whole as a total.
The entirety of something. The whole thing. The whole pie. Okay.
So what do you think about it, Jen? The genitive and the whole.
Well, so for example, if you have like ležit se mouky, so a spoonful of flour. So it's almost like it's like one of the cities. It's like a portion of. Now, I remember this by whenever I use the word of in English, I know genitive.
Yeah, that's great.
That's how I do it. But now it's making more sense. There's a reason. It's because you're taking part of something.
Part of the whole. Yeah.
Okay.
So in the expression ležít se mouky, what's the genitive here?
Ležit se is the nominative, and mouky is the genitive.
So you can imagine a pile of flour.
Yes.
That's the genitive, that's the source or the whole, and we take one part out of it.
Much like českých měst, that's the source of the one city. So that's what's in the genitive.
And we use the genitive with measurements, with weights, quantifications. This is one of the, I think, most frequent uses of the genitive case.
Yes.
So we said a spoon of something, ležít se mouky. Do you have other examples?
I always remember for like mnoho, hodně, anytime I use those, I know I have to use the genitive. Like
a lot of something.
A lot of something. Trošku. Any time you're like getting a portion of something.
A little bit of something.
Or a lot.
Or a lot of something.
But of something.
Great. We use it with words like lahev. Lahev vína.
That's right. So a bottle of beer. You're not just asking for like the big, like what container of beer do you want? Do you want a cup of beer? Do you want a bottle? A keg?
Great case.
Kus kolače.
Piece of cake. Right.
Good.
Cake is the genitive case.
It's all coming together.
And then there is one more usage, and this is with numbers. Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. This is tricky. So we use genitive if we're counting 5 or more of something. This is where Czech becomes Japanese. This is where it's a whole new world. So anytime I say 4 of something, I'm going to use the plural of the nominative. Like čtyři pivo.
Čtyři piva.
Sorry, čtyři piva. Čtyři piva. And then when I get to 5, pět piv. Because it suddenly becomes genitive. Why?
I don't know. I remember when I started teaching Czech a couple of years ago, one of my first students asked me, so Eliška, I say jedno pivo, nominative singular, 2, 3, 4 piva, nominative plural, but I say pět piv, genitive plural, and everything that's higher than 5 has to take the genitive plural. And I said, that has to be an exception. So I started counting, right? 1 rohlík, 2, 3, 4 rohlíky, 5 rohlíků.
This was before you were teaching.
Oh,
and this is so funny.
I realized, it's a rule. So after 5, after numbers 5 and higher, I have to use the genitive plural. So this is how I found out. But to be honest, I don't have an explanation here. It's
okay.
You have to remember
just
it.
the rule.
So you can remember the genitive is obsessed with quantifications.
Yes.
Right? A little bit or a lot of something, a bottle of something, a meter of something.
5 or more of something.
Yeah. And the something, the source, the whole is the genitive case.
Okay.
So we talked about quantifications and the genitive case. We also use the genitive with the or after the preposition bes. Can
without.
you kind of without? Can you kind of connect it with quantifications?
Well, it's the lack of. So it's like negative quantification.
It is.
Oh, okay.
And again, if you say lack of something, you have the preposition of in English, which in Czech
exactly
is the genitive.
Oh, it's like dám si kávu, ale bez mléka.
Bez mléka.
Yeah, like without of milk almost.
Or free of milk.
Free of milk. Free of milk. That's good.
Right. So bez mléka, bez cukru.
Bez cukru. Yes.
Without sugar. So the next usage here would be something we call the bare case usage.
Okay. Naked. No prepositions.
No prepositions, no verbs. Do you have an example where we use the genitive with no preposition, no verb that would trigger the genitive?
Well, we would say dum Elišky.
The house of Eliška.
Oh, the house of Eliška. So I think of it as the possessive, like Eliška's house, but it's the house of Eliška, and then it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right? So whenever you want to use possession in Czech, you will use the genitive.
The pen of Tomáš. The cup of his mother.
Okay. Yeah. So, Jem, at the end, I would like to tell you about a group of prepositions. There are a lot of them, over a dozen of prepositions that indicate proximity. The
like
first
how
example,
close, how far.
Do you have any examples in mind?
Blisko.
Near of something.
Daleko.
Far from something.
Vedle. That's not so much proximity, but location.
Yeah, so near to or next to something.
Yeah.
Right. You previously mentioned, at the beginning you mentioned the preposition u.
Yes, that's u, like, it's like at, kind of.
And that's an interesting preposition because it can express two things. I will give you two examples. U babičky.
At
Ukina.
grandmother's. And that's kind of like in front of the it's the same thing with z and od in my opinion, because it's like you can't be in grandmother. You have to be like at her. You know what I mean?
Next to her, in her flat.
Right, but for kino, like you're either in it or you're somewhere at it. Yeah.
So if you are not inside, if you are at it or in front of the door, you say u, sem ukina.
Sem ukina, like trying to give the person the exact location where to meet you.
So again, we express or indicate the proximity. Before we finish, I have a short activity for you, Jen. I read some interesting information about the genitive case in the book, in the case book for Czech. It was interesting and new to me as well, so I would like to share it with you and see what you think about it. Okay?
Sounds good.
The genitive case, you mentioned it yourself, has the most prepositions. How many do you think are there?
12.
More.
15.
More.
Really? Are there that many prepositions? I mean, 18.
60.
How?
So just
16.
the genitive, 60.
60. There are that many prepositions?
So, wait for it. The genitive case apparently is used with more than 60 prepositions. When I read it, I was surprised and I wanted to look it up. How many prepositions are there in total in Czech? I found an article...
60.
Just with the genitive. I found an article that says that in Czech there are over 500 prepositions.
What?
But I don't think we use that many in everyday speech. They can be old-fashioned prepositions, prepositions coming from Latin. Officially over 500, but probably in real life we don't use that many.
Okay.
So we can count
I'm sticking
down.
with my 14.
Yeah. So finally, the last information that was very interesting for me is that the genitive case is always handing off the responsibility to something else.
Right, I'm not concerned with the rest of that cake. I'm concerned with my cuscolache.
This is a great example. Yeah. When I take a piece of bread, I want to eat, or the slice of bread, I want to eat the slice.
Yes.
And not the whole bread.
Yes.
So the genitive is there, but
Nice.
it's in the back.
Yeah.
It's important, but it's not so seen, maybe.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's it, Jen. Thank you so much for joining me again, and I hope you liked it, and we will see you next time.
The logic is great. I'm really getting a lot from these videos.
That's great.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. Thank you for joining me, and see you next time.
Of course.
Okay.
See you next time.
Ciao.
Ciao.